The streets of New York in October 1982 had a peculiar chill to them. Not the sharp, bitter cold of winter, but a damp, uneasy weight that settled over the city like a low fog. The hum of cars, the chatter of pedestrians, the distant wail of sirens, all familiar rhythms of a city that never truly sleeps. Yet, in the shadow of that everyday bustle, there was a tension, a quiet anticipation that went unnoticed by most, for behind the ordinary, in the unassuming corridors of the Sentry Armored Car Company, a storm was quietly assembling, a calculated orchestration of greed, daring and betrayal that would leave its mark on the annals of criminal history. At the center of this unfolding drama was David McMillan, a man whose outward demeanor projected calm and competence, the sort of figure who blends seamlessly into the background, unnoticed and unremarkable. He was a security guard, entrusted with the protection of the armored cars and the vast sums they carried. And it was precisely this trust, this illusion of reliability, that would become the keystone of the heist. McMillan understood the rhythms of the depot, the timing of armored trucks, the flow of cash, the subtle routines of his colleagues. Knowledge, as it often does, became power, and power became temptation. McMillan did not act on impulse. The plan that would culminate in one of New York's most audacious robberies began with observation and patience. For weeks, he meticulously studied the comings and goings of employees, memorized the schedule of armored car departures, and catalogued the blind spots of security cameras. Each detail, seemingly trivial in isolation, the pause of a guard at a desk, the timing of a delivery, was etched into his mind like a blueprint. This was a patient man, a methodical man, aware that opportunity favors those who prepare. But McMillan knew he could not act alone. He recruited a team of men whose desperation or ambition made them susceptible to persuasion. These were not hardened criminals, not professional robbers, schooled in the art of heist. They were men willing to step into the shadows for a chance at sudden fortune. Among them was Richard "Rick" Barnett, a man whose hands were steady, whose nerves were cold, and whose past brushes with the law were minor, but telling. There was also Paul Melee, a man skilled with vehicles and mechanics, whose knowledge would prove indispensable. Together, under McMillan's guidance, they formed a network of necessity, bound by opportunity and ambition, a fragile constellation poised for chaos. The night of the robbery arrived under a veil of darkness and quiet. The streets of Manhattan were dimmed by fog, and the occasional flicker of neon signs reflecting in puddles left by an earlier drizzle. Inside the Sentry depot, fluorescent lights hummed overhead, bathing polished concrete floors in sterile white. The security cameras blinked silently, capturing nothing out of the ordinary, or so they thought. McMillan, in uniform, moved with the calm authority of a man completely in control, yet every step was deliberate, every motion calculated to turn familiarity into advantage. The operation was surgical. It did not rely on brute force or theatrics, but on precision, timing, and the careful subversion of trust. The guards, unsuspecting and reliant on McMillan's authority, became unwitting obstacles, neutralized before they could grasp the reality of what was unfolding. Violence was minimal but effective, a series of rapid, controlled strikes that subdued resistance without unnecessary harm. Bound and silenced, the employees were transformed into passive witnesses, their roles reduced to that of the helpless, observing the betrayal of the one they trusted most. In the center of the depot lay the prize, the armored vehicles, loaded with cash and ready for distribution. McMillan's team moved with purpose, loading duffel bags with bundles of bills, their actions choreographed with the precision of a rehearsal carried out in the shadow. The weight of the money, tangible and immense, must have pressed on them with both exhilaration and dread. It was not just currency, it was power, freedom, and the temptation of a life unmoored from law and consequence. Every detail of the escape had been considered. Vehicles were parked in inconspicuous positions, routes mapped to avoid the patrols and the natural chaos of city traffic. They slipped into the night like ghosts, leaving behind a scene that would puzzle authorities and enrapture the public imagination alike. To the outside world, the depot remained as it had always been, orderly and secure, with only the subtle absence of millions hinting at the calamity that had occurred under its roof. The investigation that followed was exhaustive. The FBI, in coordination with local law enforcement, combed through the depot, interviewed employees, and tracked every potential lead. But the most sophisticated security measures in the world are useless against betrayal from within. Macmillan had exploited human trust, the very system designed to protect the assets, and for a time, it seemed as though the team had vanished entirely into the urban ether. Yet human nature, as ever, is a double-edged sword. The sudden acquisition of wealth, even when hidden, leaves trace. A conspicuous purchase, a sudden change in behavior, a loose word spoken in confidence. Each was a thread that investigators followed, gradually unraveling the web of the heist. Members of the team, despite their initial caution, became the architects of their own undoing. One by one, connections were made, identities uncovered, and the circle tightened around the perpetrators. When the arrests came, they were both swift and inevitable. Macmillan and his accomplices faced the weight of justice, their meticulous planning undone by the subtle yet relentless mechanics of human error. The cash, much of it recovered, was only a fragment of the story. The greater loss, immeasurable and profound, was trust betrayed, faith shattered, the realization that the human element is the one vulnerability no system can ever fully guard against. As I reflect on the Sentry Armored Car robbery, I am struck by the duality of its lesson. It is a tale of cunning and preparation, of opportunity seized with precision, but it is also a stark reminder of human frailty. Knowledge can be power, but it can also be the seed of ruin. Trust can be the foundation of security, yet it can be the very instrument of collapse. Macmillan's actions were not just a theft of money, they were a theft of certainty, a demonstration that even the most carefully constructed systems are ultimately at the mercy of the human heart. The streets of New York, the Sentry Depot, the city's pulse, all returned to their rhythms, yet a shadow lingered. In every bank, every armored vehicle, every moment of assumed safety, there is the whisper of the question that this robbery leaves behind. When those entrusted to guard the treasure become the threat, how secure are we really? And when the ordinary person turns extraordinary through ambition and betrayal, can any measure of vigilance ever truly suffice? The answers remain elusive, echoing in the minds of those who study such acts of audacity, lingering long after the city moves on, as silent and haunting as the night when it all unfolded.